Hi, welcome to episode 2 of What's Cooking India. Today I'll be making a few dishes from the state of Arunachal Pradesh. First is zaan, which is a finger millet porridge. I washed 4 tablespoons of ragi in water till the water was clear. Then I separated ragi and water and put them to dry. I didn't filter the water directly as I thought ragi might get stuck in those pores. Ragi got stuck to the cup because it was wet, so I had to use my hands to get it off the cup. So much for trying to be aesthetic. Once filtered, I spread them on a cloth to dry. Since the ragi was wet, it stuck to my fingers and I had to brush them off. I didn't worry about the cloth being wet cause it's gonna dry anyways. Because I was making this for one, I didn't soak a large quantity of ragi. Once the ragi had dried, I transferred them to a blender and blended till I got a fine powder. Then, I used a sieve to separate the flour. When there are only brown bits left out, you can stop sieving. If my flour was hot, I would have spread it on a cloth and let it cool. Since I made a small quantity, it had cooled by the time I was done sieving. I got around 2 tablespoons of ragi flour from this, which I used in the zaan. It's usually eaten with a chutney made by mixing hard-boiled eggs and ginger. To a pan, I added my ragi flour and fried on low heat. I fried it till I could smell the flour. Then I added 2 cups of water to it. Also added some salt and let it boil till it thickened. I scraped the sides since it kept sticking there. Other than not wanting to waste the food, I didn't want it to stay uncooked. You can add vegetables and pepper if you wish. It should look translucent and have a consistency as shown. It thickens a little more while cooling, so it's better if you add a good amount of water. Zaan is a breakfast dish consumed by the Mompa tribe living there since it keeps them full and is very nutritious. They don't use a lot of oil in their cooking and I haven't seen any recipes that use ghee either. I topped it with some shallots and ate it. When I started eating, I realized I added too much salt to this dish. I struggled to finish it because of this. Otherwise, it's a decent dish. Next, I made kharzi rice. First, I soaked 15 red chilies in hot water for 20 minutes. 15 minutes is enough. Since I forgot about my chilies, they soaked for 20 minutes. I underestimated the spice of these red chilies in my last video. And the chilies decided it was time for revenge. Once done soaking, I added these red chilies to a blender, followed by 6 cloves of garlic, 2 inches of ginger, and 80 grams of mozzarella cheese. I used a 100 gram cheese block, which I cut into 80 grams approximately. While grating them, my body heat started melting the cheese, so I just cut a few blocks and added them. I added the water in which red chilies were soaking, so it didn't need extra water. But if you don't do this, add some water. This paste should have a texture as shown. I added this paste to a pan followed by oil. Millets, rice and wheat are few of the mainly grown crops in Arunachal Pradesh. This is when I realized I made a mistake. I was supposed to fry the onions before adding this paste. So I washed the pan and restarted the cooking process. Now I added some oil to a pan and a cup of spring onions to it. The onions must have been like, let's see how long it takes this woman to realize she's forgotten us. I forgot I cut them for this recipe. Traditionally, fermented yak cheese and soybean cheese are used. Since this isn't available in my region, I substituted with mozzarella as suggested by many recipes. The cheese will start sticking to your pan once the heat increases, so try to stick to a low temperature while making this dish and also stir often. You should let the sauce cook till the oil separates and it thickens. This is another recipe from the Mompa tribe in Arunachal Pradesh. They have a unique way of cooking their rice in bamboo. The bamboo tubes are soaked in water overnight, so they become wet. The next day, rice is stuffed inside these hollow bamboo shoots and cooked over coal. I'm sure this rice has a good smoky flavor from being cooked on coal. Speaking of rice, it's time to add our cooked rice to this pan. I used Sona Masuri rice, but you can use anything you wish to use. The steam started fogging the lens, which is why it looks a little faded, but the final product looked orange. I know my sauce looks watery, but the rice fixed it. Rice is the solution for anything and everything. I was surprised by its taste. I thought it would be very spicy, but it wasn't. The cheese balanced the spice and it wasn't overpowering. Garlic and ginger are the superheroes of this dish. It's a tasty dish and very easy to make. These two are enough for me to make this dish again. I had spring onions left over and had to use them in the next recipe I'm making. For the last dish, I made tentuk. I took 2 cups of maida and some salt to a bowl. As my soup will contain salt, I added just a pinch of salt to this dough. Then I slowly added water and made the dough. It stuck to my hand at the initial stages, but the dough started coming together, so everything was fine. It might be my first time making noodles from scratch, but I tried all the methods I know. Keep watching to know what those methods are. Tentuk is a Tibetan noodle soup dish consumed by the people of Arunachal Pradesh. In Tibetan, ten means stretch and tuk means noodles. As these noodles are made by stretching, this dish is known as tentuk. The soup cooks fast, so have your dough ready on the side. The best thing about this dish was the noodles didn't have to have a specific shape, which made it easier for me to make the noodles. Once the dough was ready, I let it rest for around 30 to 45 minutes, after which I knead the dough again for 5 more minutes to make the dough softer. I didn't stick to one recipe because there were so many variations and I combined a few of them. Then I separated them and let them rest for 10 minutes. Make sure not to keep the mini doughs close to each other cause they do be sticky. Rest well my mini doughs. While the dough was resting, I prepared my ingredients and made the soup. For the soup, I added a tablespoon of oil to a kadai and let it heat. Once the oil was hot, I added my red onions, spring onions, tomato, peas and ginger garlic paste and cooked them till the vegetables softened a little. Since I'll be adding water later, it's okay if the vegetables are half cooked. You can add vegetables of your choice. I had to finish a few veggies, so I added whatever I had on hand. Are you team soup noodles or team dry noodles? Once the vegetables softened, I added 3 cups of water initially and very little salt as the soya sauce I'll be adding contains salt. Then I added some red chili flakes which I made by grinding red chilies in a blender. They didn't add much spice which I realized much later. So I used a simple fix which I'll be discussing while tasting the dish. I added 3 tablespoons of dark soya sauce to this recipe. I prefer this over light soya sauce, but both of them are good and have their purpose. While the soup was boiling, I prepared my noodles on the side. Here I'll be showing you the 3 methods I mentioned before. Wakey, it's time to rise and shine and become noodles. First, take a piece of dough and roll it flat. The maida will retract itself, but don't worry, keep going. I've been going to the places where we used to meet before. I have difficulty working with maida as you can see, but both my dough and I can give you my love. I love you. And then cut it into thick strips. Then place them on an oil plate so they don't stick to the plate. Since the soup was boiling on the side, I had to work fast, which is why I cut the process. For the next method, I rolled my dough into mini dough babies. Don't they look like newborns wrapped in a blanket? That's why I'm calling these dough babies. I rolled the remaining dough in this shape and let it rest on a well-oiled plate. Then I used 2 different methods to shape these noodles. For the second method, I used my fingers to pull the cheeks off the dough babies and then continued the process till they were fully stretched. Then I broke them into pieces and put them in my soup. For the third method, I made a line out of these dough babies and then held them by their edges and tapped them on the oil surface to elongate. The dough kept escaping, but I somehow managed to stretch it out. This method was the easiest for me, and once I stopped shooting this video, I used this method to make the noodles. Then I added 3 more cups of water as the dough kept soaking it. I boiled it till the noodles rose to the top and got a little translucent. Then it was ready to serve. I ate tentuk with some chili oil. The dish was very good. The dark soy sauce had some sweet notes and the chili oil was spicy. What are my final thoughts? These recipes were easy to make and different from the food I regularly consume. My first thought was that the food is going to be bland and not to my liking, as it didn't use the spices I regularly use. But I didn't know you could make good food without using spices. I'm glad to have been proved wrong. It was a little difficult to find vegetarian food and something that didn't use vegetables specific to that region. So if I missed out on your favorite foods, sorry. When I surfed the net, results on different websites were more or less the same, and this repetitive information made it tough to pick dishes I could make easily. I thought I might not find enough vegetarian recipes to try out, but there were more vegetarian recipes than I could imagine. Zaan was the easiest dish to make. I would have liked it more if I added sweetener. This would be a good dish to eat when someone is sick, as it is very nutritious and filling. Karzi rice comes together in minutes, so if I don't have the time to cook something nice, I'll make this again. Tentuk took a lot of time to prepare, but the dish cooks in minutes and was definitely worth the effort. During my research, I found that smoking and boiling are 2 of the mainly used cooking methods. The Arunachalese cuisine is influenced by Tibetan cuisine in a few ways. The consumption of momos momos, tentuk, and many more foods are examples of this. Articles with recipes using bamboo shoot, meat, and alcoholic beverages kept surfacing. Those articles taught me about what one can experience in Arunachal Pradesh. Fewer recipes could be cooked at home with the ingredients I have at hand. I could have chosen more popular cuisines I saw in articles, but this series is about exploring foods that are not well known. Arunachal Pradesh is majorly inhabited by tribes. I saw 65% in an article, but the census data could be old. Comparing the data that I have, the tribal population seems to be reducing over the years. The cooking methods and dishes vary from tribe to tribe. I learned a lot about Arunachal Pradesh while making this video. Very glad to have started this series. It's not just about cooking and eating food. It's the learning experience that comes with this that makes the process enjoyable. This episode was an eye-opener for me and might be so for whoever is watching this video. For me, Indian food was all about spices and ghee. But now, I understand that's not all there is to food. It varies from person to person and regional foods exist for a reason. The northeastern cuisine is underrated. And if an Indian like me found out about the food they consume because of this series, it might take some time to reach the world. I'm happy to have tried the Arunachalese cuisine. Have you tried Arunachal cuisine before? If not, would you give it a try?